Okay. I have gotten up this morning and done some additional work. Now, you really can't see it on this one because it's setting to dry. I'm going to take these little clamps off. And you can see, I use my little glue stick thing. You can see here where I've glued in another piece of board just like on this side. And you can also see I've glued on a piece of felt here to keep the eye in place. I've also made sure I marked this in Sharpie. I also went through and pulled back some of the tape prior to putting this on, and once this is dry I can take this off. This is here because you can see here what I noticed when I got up to look at these is that sometimes with about 3 of them there was a bit of a gap between, like, everything had glued around the base except for, like, I don't know, 5-6 millimeters for some reason. So I went in and added more glue and then am letting it dry, and these are just here to hold everything in place, and then these on the back are just clamped around the bottom to hold this in place until the glue cures here. So these are in the gluing, the final gluing stages. So you can see here I've added some in, but I haven't added this piece of cardboard. And I cut these little bits of cardboard at about, I think it's 2.9 by 3.9. I went through and looked to see what would work the best. And the way that I'm gluing them in here is super simple. Coming in, adding some glue. Now, I think you've probably already noticed that I have a very particular way of gluing. Now, one school of thought is you press this down, the glue that's all humped up, kind of bubbled up where it's not hitting anything, kind of moves around and spreads itself around. I don't trust that. So this is my little bit of Wilma-ness in here, buttering it like a piece of bread. And again, children, don't wipe things off like that. I always have to do this. I just don't trust it. And then I cut it so it's short enough I can basically rest it in that bottom piece. And then bring it up against the side. And then grab a couple of clamps. I love these little clamps. And pop them in there, and hitting them about there presses everything into place. So while this is gluing, I can be working on some other things. This will take a couple of hours to cure. I think they look very interesting like this, with like little legs. Believe me, if you've hung around and seen me working on stuff, seen enough of my work, you know that there's all kinds of things that are in store coming up. But I think what I'm going to do now is I'm kind of running low on those eyeballs, the pieces that I made. I think I'm going to be making some additional ones and changing around things just a tiny little bit, because I do have some, like this one right here. I'm going to use this one I'm going to use as the prototype for another doll body, because of course you knew this was heading here. So I'm going to use this as a prototype. I'm not going to work on that pattern today. I think I'm going to make the eyes at least this morning, and then move on to working on other parts of the lock, including the padlock, including these shackle parts, which I keep calling hasps. A hasp is a part of a lock, but not this kind of padlock, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to move on and probably start working on these. And you can see where this being a piece of foam that I could bend around a little bit is helping out a lot here. need to mark that too in case I need to pull these apart. So this is what I'm working on right now, and hopefully by the end of the day I'll have these things completely together and ready to go for the painting process, which I have some really interesting things that I want to paint on these and how I want to work with them. So pardon me, I kind of sound like I'm falling asleep or anything, and quite the opposite. I've had 2 full cups of coffee and I'm actually a little jittery right now. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you, patrons. And maybe this one will be hooked up with another video, so maybe I should just say okay, I'll see ya. Okay, I wanted to show you how I've been putting together these eyes, and you can see on these that it's painted paper. I've got a drawing on top of it in acrylic paint pen, and then I've used some of that not diamond glaze, dimensional magic to go on the top to kind of give it more of a glossy appearance. You can see here how it's got a bit of a wave to it. Some of them have it, others don't. I'm still trying to figure out how I do it. This one's a little better. Anywho, you can see I've got a lot of little eyes here. Now, some of these, because I was going to be using on something that had a potentially you could see the back of, I had covered them. And then on others, because this is all that I've got left right here, this, I don't know, group of about 8 or 9 of them, you can see there how I've cut and folded the paper to go over the edges and cover the edge of the paper. Some of these, like this one, you can see I drew it on a different color and then put it on top of this, and then like this one, you can see I just drew it right on top of the paper. Now, I prepped probably, I think it's 35 or 40 of them, and I've just now gotten to this stage where I'm starting to trim them down so then I can wrap and glue these. So I glue the front part, trim it with scissors, and then it kind of looks like this. And you can see I do a bit of a fold there to make sure I've gotten everything down to the edge. But to get to this point, I need to cut these down. Now, I've been using a lot of the scraps that I have left over, like some little dinky pieces that I really can't do a whole lot with. So you can see here I've got one that I've drawn an oval on. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, why don't you just use a template to draw these? Kind of like the let's see here, it's over here, my circle template. And there's a definite reason for that. I don't want them to be perfect. So what I'm going to do is I've got a fairly new blade in here. Let me snap that one off because I want a really good blade. And basically I'm just going to turn, I've drawn these on there so I know about how big I want to make it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this kind of into a rectangle, which then raises the question of why don't you just cut out a bunch of rectangles? I don't know. I'm weird. I think there's a part of me that needs this part somehow. Okay, so you can see I've got it. I've gone to the tips and the sides here. So basically all I'm going to do now, take off the little triangles. And sometimes I follow what I've drawn, sometimes I don't. Sorry, everything's shaking. So now we're kind of getting a squashed stop sign. And then I go around and I nibble off the little corners. And I don't have to be perfect because I know what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using some sandpaper to help round this out. So end up with a bunch that look like this. Now, normally, just because it bothers me sometimes when I can see where those lines are. I don't know why it bothers me, it just does. I'm going to reach over here and grab my little sandpaper block. And this is perfect. It's kind of worn down a bit. Like you can see some shiny bits in here. I really do need to replace this. And then all I do is I go around the edge, and all those teeny tiny little corners, I just take those off. And then, because you can see how it kind of pushes up these little ridges, I don't like that. I go along, and that way I can kind of see what's still here, what kind of looks like a point, and then you turn it over, and guess what? There's more of those little ridges. Now, the reason I use kind of a semi-dull kind of sandpaper is so I'm not like taking off too much material. This gray board is, you know, kind of just pressed together bits of extraneous fluff. So then I get it to something that looks about like that. Now what I do, I've still got these to do. I'll do those in a little bit. I've got my paper, and I basically just hold it up, giving it 5 to 6 millimeters on either side. Again, I just cut out the rectangle. It's easier. Now, and I'm going to do this with my finger. Well, no, wait. I don't have to do it with my finger because I have. You're just hearing me. I put this immediately into water, so it won't dry out and completely kill the brush. This is tacky glue that I've watered a little bit. And I paint this on. Press it down. I can go in the water. And flip it over, and then I give it a press like this. So now you can kind of see where that oval is. And then come in and trim it back a little bit. So it looks like that. Now I wait for it to dry. I want this to dry for a little bit. So I'm going to show you how I cut one of these. Let me grab one of these bigger ones. You can see this one is, you can see where I pressed it in there. So then all I do is I go around and I cut my little darts out. I pay more attention to the darts when they're closer to each of these ends. And then for these somewhat larger areas where I've got a little bit more space, you can see how these are different here and then they are here. And then I just continue going around. Now I've got, like I said, I'm doing about 40 of them because I have several different ideas of things that I want to use, and making these can be, as you can already see, is a bit involved. So, you know, spending the better part of a day working on these. Now it's just a little bit too big, so I'm going to trim that one too. So spending the better part of a day doing this will really help. Now, help me in the long run. I can replenish these, so I'll have closer to about 50 of them. Yep, sometimes that happens. In which case, I will go in and add another little bit of paper in there to keep that down. So that's how I go about making these. Now, this is before I draw anything on these. And one of the reasons I decided to go ahead and work on these today is because it is raining. And because of the rain, the cure time for the insides of these, can you still see that glue is really still wet? The cure time on this, because it is so humid, is going to take much, much longer. So I'm just setting these aside and working on something else. I don't want to work on anything. I mean, working with a little bit of this glue and the paper isn't that big of a deal because I'm not using very much glue, and it's glue on paper. So it's going to help out. I mean, it'll go along pretty quickly, and then hopefully by tomorrow the humidity will go down and I can get back to work and glue things on. I still need to track down a couple of things I know that are in my stash, and I think I know where I put them. I need to go grab them. Some little metal parts that I want to use on these too. So this is what I'm doing today. So you've seen how I've put together parts of these locks, how I'm putting together the eyes, a little bit about why I'm working with padlocks, and yeah, So thank you, patrons, and I will see you in the video next time.